In a sense, I agree with some of the sentiments behind your question, because there's always an optimal balance to be drawn between, on the one hand, the involvement of the state or the government in an issue, and on the other hand, leaving the matter to private enterprise, social enterprise, or the community to work towards. Government should not be involved in everything, and yet at the same time it's unrealistic to expect everything just to be left to the general public to look into as well. So really, what is this optimal balance? I mean, one of the problems right now with so-called community moderation is that it means many things to different people. That's one. Some of the questions that could be raised is who comprises the community, who constitutes the community? What is the legitimacy of this so-called community to, in a sense, act as a moderating voice? Are we certain that the so-called community is well represented by a cross-section of the public, or is it really just the intelligentsia or those who are more involved in new media issues? Yet at the same time, there are also other issues like, this is by its very definition new media. It is something that is very much at its infancy. Should we allow things to continue to evolve over time towards what eventually becomes a more optimal situation? So I think in many ways we are grappling with these issues because they're so tentative, they're so new. We don't rule out the fact that there should be a greater role for community moderation, whatever that may mean, but this is something that we think should be given a bit more time to evolve so that it reaches a more mature point. We're just not sure that at this point in time, our society necessarily knows what really is community moderation in any event. But as I said, I think the point you raised is a very profound one. It's something that has always got to be at the crux of this debate about what we're doing in the sphere of new media.
Developments in new media will have a powerful impact on the nation. You see it happening across the causeway. In March 2008 this year, you saw how important a role the new media played in the outcome of the election. In fact, before the elections took place, we did a very careful study. Ames did a very careful study of the Malaysian election. And there was no doubt, after we had done the study, that it is impossible to ignore the critical role this technology is playing in political contests. You can see it in America, right? John McCain says that he's never used email in his life. But he now has a blog. Senator Obama, a lot of his electoral success, I think, can be attributed to how effectively he has used the internet to mobilize resources. Campaign funding is very important in America, and reaching out to the young. In fact, some journalists overseas in Australia, they call their recent election what is the Facebook or the YouTube election. The fact that they put such a label to the election is a very clear acknowledgement that the new media is an important part of the exercise, and how you use it can have a big influence on the votes. So the things that we're doing in terms of studying what the implications are, what are the steps that Singapore as a whole ought to take, and how the government is going to respond to our recommendations, the final decisions that are being taken, the new rules of engagement, I think will have a very profound effect on the electoral process in Singapore. To
encourage dissemination of information and to encourage good discussions of issues, that if you're an intermediary and a defamatory statement is posted on the site that you run, that of itself ought not to make you responsible for defamation, provided of course you act responsibly, and if you're told by a credible source that it's defamatory, then you take it down as soon as possible. We feel that sort of intermediary liability is desirable, because it's very difficult sometimes to police effectively all the things that people post on a website that you run. So I think to that extent we feel for intermediaries it is fair to have some change in the law.
By what we mean by intermediaries are people who are post content. For example, Storm, Tomorrow.sg. So these are intermediaries in the sense that they are content hosters. Currently the law only exempts ISPs from liability because they are mere conduits, they are like post office. But the content hosters are more than post office, they are more like bulletin boards, or more like newspapers. So if a newspaper as a publisher, there is some uncertainty in the law as it applies to Singapore, because there has been no case in Singapore yet as to whether a content poster will be liable in defamation for content that's posted by a third party over which he has no editorial control.
I think a radical idea would be to have a free-for-all regime, right? And I'm assuming that that is possibly a radical idea. I'm not sure that I would go along with that. But I would also say that, assuming I accept your point that what we are suggesting here are not radical, assuming that they are not. I may disagree with the description, but I do say this, that whether you call these ideas radical or non-radical, they will have, as I said earlier, in response to her question, there will be, I think, a considerable impact on the body politic. I think it's going to have an impact on the way political contests are fought. Because there's no doubt that these ideas, we may call them not radical, will definitely open up the political space.
That, there are of course, I'm sure, members of the community who would really want us to go very far. In the sense, really, a more free-for-all system. I would say that even if we have not gone as far as this, we are certainly pushing the envelope. I think there's no question here that we're pushing the envelope. And I think it's one thing for people to be talking about issues in general. It's quite another for a council appointed by government to come up with these proposals that tells government, let's push the envelope, let's go beyond what we are currently doing, because we do need to have a more liberal regime, and it is in our interest to have a more liberal regime. So I think to that extent, I hope members of the community will view positively many of the recommendations that we are making here.